I will walk you through the 6 steps for how to write an extended response for the GED 2014 test by using a sample prompt and passages. I explained these steps in detail in the first video. Let's review these steps now. Step 1. Read and unpack the prompt. 2. Read and collect relevant details from the passages. 3. Rewrite the question and turn it into your thesis statement. 4. Organize your details in a logical order. 5. Draft a response. And 6. Reread and edit or revise your response. First, we will read the sample prompt and determine what it is asking us to do. It says, analyze the responses from 4 speakers to determine if Christopher Columbus's arrival to the New World had more of a positive or a negative effect on the Americas. Use relevant and specific evidence from these sources to support your position. Type your response in the box. This task may require approximately 25 minutes to complete. So we will need to analyze 4 speakers to determine if Columbus's arrival had more of a positive or negative effect on the Americas, and we will have to use evidence to support the position we take. Step 2. Read and collect relevant details from the passages. To help us do this in a more organized way, we will use a graphic organizer, which is a visual way of organizing details. In this graphic organizer, called a discussion web, we will put the main idea of the prompt in the middle of the box. In this case, the effect of Columbus on the New World. And where it says yes, we will list the positive effects, and where it says no, we will list the negative effects. Now, let's read the passages and list the main ideas from each passage in our graphic organizer. Speaker A says, Christopher Columbus was a genuine hero in history. He discovered America for Europe and opened a new world of peoples, resources, art, philosophy, and science. Columbus found not only a new geographic place, but also a new world of knowledge and experience. He started an enormous westward expansion of Europeans to North and South America, one of the greatest movements of people in history. So Speaker A says that Columbus found a new world of knowledge and mentions people, resources, art, philosophy, and science. We will list this as a positive effect on the right-hand side of our organizer. Speaker A also mentions westward expansion as one of the greatest movements of people in history. We will put this on the right side as well. Speaker B says, many Latin Americans are torn between pride in their European Spanish heritage and outrage at some of the Europeans' dealings with Native and African Americans. Columbus and the European explorers took Indian lands and enslaved Indians. But the Europeans also brought new religions, new technology, and new industries to the Americas. Speaker B talks about how the Europeans took Indian lands and enslaved the Indians. These are negative effects, which we will list on the left-hand side of our organizer. However, Speaker B also mentions new religions, technology, and industries, which are positive effects, so we have something to add to the right-hand side as well. Speaker C says, Columbus started the wave of European expansion that destroyed our traditional way of life and very nearly destroyed our people. He and his successors brought diseases that killed many of our people. Europeans exploited natural resources without regard for environmental effects. Our youth need to realize the real war is now. We are losing who we are and have been for hundreds of years. It's time for us to choose our own roads. Speaker C talks about how the Europeans destroyed the Indians' way of life, brought diseases, and exploited natural resources. all negative effects. In the last passage, Speaker D says, "Not all groups are going to feel the same way about Columbus, but I think it is fair to say that Columbus is worthy to be called a great explorer because he introduced an old world to a new one. He started a long historical process of settlement that eventually produced the democratic system that we still hold on to today, even though that system wasn't and still isn't perfect." Speaker D talks about how Columbus helped produce the democratic system we have today. We'll list this on the right as a positive effect. Now we have to take a position, so let's analyze our details a little more closely. On second thought, it doesn't seem like the westward expansion of Europeans to the Americas is a very strong positive effect, so I'm going to cross that one off. And what Speaker D says about Columbus helping to produce our democratic system seems like a bit of a stretch, so I'm going to cross that one off as well. That leaves us with a better argument for Columbus's arrival having more of a negative effect on the Americas. Now that we've decided what our position is, let's move on to step 3 and write our thesis statement. We are going to refer back to the extended response prompt and use wording from it to write our thesis statement. Here's the prompt again. Analyze the responses from 4 speakers to determine if Christopher Columbus's arrival to the New World had more of a positive or negative effect on the Americas. Using this wording, my thesis statement might look something like this. After analyzing responses from 4 different speakers, I have come to the conclusion that Christopher Columbus's arrival to the New World had more of a negative than positive effect on the Americas. Now that we have our thesis statement, we can move on to step 4. Organize details in a logical order. Let's go back to our graphic organizer and put our details in the order we want them to appear in our response. I like the idea of starting with destroyed way of life because this is a more general idea, and the other ideas can be used as examples. I think I'll use took Indian lands next, then diseases killed Indians, enslaved Indians, and exploited natural resources last, since it has the least to do with the other details. There's no right or wrong order for presenting these details. The most important thing to consider is, does the order flow? Now that we have our ideas organized, we can move on to step 5 and start drafting a response. Remember, each extended response needs to have an introduction, body, and conclusion. Let's look at the introduction first. In the introduction, we will be presenting our claim and the main ideas surrounding our claim. If we need help getting started, we can use sentence frames. Sentence frames are useful because they start a sentence for us and then we finish the rest of the sentence. They can be used with almost any topic. Here's an example. A key issue raised in both blank and blank is blank. Using the passages we just read, we could say something like, a key issue raised in both excerpts from Speaker A and Speaker B is the effect of Christopher Columbus's arrival on the New World. Another example is, in discussions of blank, one controversial issue has been blank. We could say, in discussions of Christopher Columbus's voyages, one controversial issue has been the effect of his arrival on the New World. Pay close attention to this example because we're going to use it in our introduction. So how do we start our introduction? What should our first sentence be? Here are a few examples of some leads we could use. A surprising statement or statistic, a direct or rhetorical question, a relevant quote, historical background, or an anecdote, which is a short personal account of something related to the topic. I have decided to start with a rhetorical question, which is a question you ask for effect and you don't actually expect it to be answered. Here's my introduction. Many people talk about Columbus's discovery of the New World, but how can you discover something that was already there? The Native Americans, or Indians, were already living in this new world. It was not new for them. It was already their home. However, it was, indeed, a new world for the Europeans that followed Christopher Columbus to the Americas. In discussions of Christopher Columbus's voyages, one controversial issue has been the effect of Columbus's arrival on the New World. After analyzing responses from 4 different speakers, I have come to the conclusion that Christopher Columbus's arrival to the New World had more of a negative than positive effect on the Americas. Notice our sentence frame here and our thesis at the very end of our introduction. The thesis statement does not necessarily have to be the last sentence of the introduction. It could be the first sentence, but I usually prefer to have it at the end.